Okay, so you know that walk, the one from the self-checkout back to your car, where you're staring at the receipt like it personally insulted you. Went in for, what, a normal week of groceries? Some chicken, a couple boxes of cereal, milk, the usual stuff. Nothing fancy, nothing crazy. And you had a number in your head. Call it 60, 70 bucks. Whatever your brain's old default setting is. And then the total flashes up and it's 90-something, and you just kind of stand there, blinking, doing the math again in your head like maybe the machine made a mistake. It didn't. It never does. And there's this specific flavor of confusion that only grocery prices give you. This, wait, what just happened feeling. Half annoyed, half genuinely bewildered. Honestly, I've had that exact moment more times this year than I'd like to admit. The little parking lot recalculation, standing by my trunk, receipt in hand, going, okay, but why though? And for a long time, my answer to myself was just this vague, unsatisfying word. Inflation. Like that explained anything. It's the kind of word that sounds official enough to end the conversation. So you just shrug and move on, feeling a little poorer and a little more confused every single week. But here's the thing. Once I actually pulled that word apart, once I looked at what's really happening behind your grocery bill, it stopped being one mysterious blob called inflation and turned into a handful of very specific, very understandable things. And once you see them too, honestly, you're going to shop differently. Not in a stressed-out, coupon-hoarding way. In a calmer, more clear-eyed way. So, what actually happened here? It's not one monster, it's a pile of small ones. Here's the first thing that surprised me. We treat inflation like it's some single villain, this one big bad thing that swooped in and ruined grocery shopping. But it's really not one thing. It's more like, imagine 4 or 5 separate leaks in your roof, all happening at the same time, in different rooms. You look up and go, why is my house wet? And the honest answer is, for like 5 different reasons, actually. Shipping costs went up. Fuel costs went up. Packaging materials got more expensive. Labor costs shifted. Certain crops had bad seasons. None of these things are secretly the same problem wearing a trench coat. They're separate leaks that all happen to hit around the same time. Why does this matter to you? Because when you think it's one giant, unstoppable force, it feels hopeless, like there's nothing to even understand. Just something to endure. But when you realize it's a handful of smaller, specific pressures, some of which ease up, some of which don't, you can actually start making smarter choices about where your money goes, instead of just throwing your hands up. The takeaway here is simple. Stop asking, why is everything expensive? And start asking, why is this specific thing expensive? Coffee and cocoa got hit by genuinely rough growing seasons. Packaged snack foods got hit more by packaging and transport costs. Different leaks, different rooms. The supply chain domino effect. Okay, this one's kind of wild, once you actually picture it. A single product on a shelf, say, a jar of pasta sauce, isn't just like magically appearing there. It's tomatoes grown somewhere, trucked somewhere else, processed, jarred, labeled, boxed, put on a container ship or a truck, driven to a warehouse, then driven again to your store. That's a genuinely long chain of hands, and every single link in that chain got more expensive at some point over the last few years. Fuel, labor, shipping containers, even the cardboard the jars sit in. Think of it like a game of telephone, except instead of a whispered sentence getting distorted, it's a small cost getting passed down and slightly amplified at every single step. The trucking company raises rates a little to cover fuel. The distributor raises prices a little to cover that. The store raises prices a little more to cover their own increased costs plus that. By the time it reaches you, those small individual bumps have stacked into something that actually stings at checkout. Nobody in that chain necessarily did anything shady. It's just, math, compounding quietly the whole way down. Why this matters? Once you get that a product's price is really the sum of a dozen invisible little journeys, you start noticing which foods have shorter, simpler chains. Stuff grown or made close to you, in season, minimally processed, tends to dodge a lot of those compounding little bumps. So a genuinely useful habit here, And I do this now without even thinking about it, is leaning a bit more into what's actually in season and a bit less into the heavily packaged, well-traveled stuff. It's not about becoming some hardcore homesteader. It's just noticing the journey behind the jar. Shrinkflation. The quiet, sneaky one. This one made me genuinely irritated when I first noticed it, not gonna lie. You ever pick up a bag of chips that feels like it's mostly air? Or grab your usual box of cereal, and something feels off, lighter, like the box shrank but nobody told you? That's not you being paranoid. That's a real, documented thing called shrinkflation. Companies quietly making the package smaller while keeping the price the same, or even raising it a little. Same brand, same box design, same shelf spot, just less inside. It's honestly a little sneaky, and I say that with some respect, in a well-played kind of way. Because it works exactly because our brains anchor to price and packaging, not weight. You glance at a familiar box at a familiar price, and your brain goes, yep, normal, and moves on. Nobody's out there memorizing exact ounce counts. That's kind of the whole point. Why this matters to your wallet. You can be paying more per actual bite of food, without the sticker price ever technically going up, which makes you feel a little gaslit. Honestly, like your eyes and your stomach are lying to you. So here's the actionable bit, and it's a small habit that pays off fast. Start glancing at the unit price tag on the shelf, that tiny price per ounce or price per 100 grams number most stores are required to post. It's usually right there in small print under the shelf price, completely ignored by, well, basically everyone. That number cuts straight through the shrinking box trick and tells you what you're actually paying for what you're actually getting. Prices go up fast, come down slow. Here's a pattern that used to genuinely bug me before I understood it. Fuel costs spike and grocery prices climb within like a week. Fuel costs drop back down months later, and groceries just stay up there, stubbornly. Like a balloon that inflated fast and now refuses to fully deflate. Part of that is legitimate. Contracts, existing inventory, locked-in supplier deals take time to unwind. But part of it, honestly, is just companies discovering that people kept buying anyway. Once shoppers proved they'd still pay the higher price, there was, not exactly a rush to bring it back down. It's not some cartoonish conspiracy. It's just basic pricing behavior. Companies responding to what the market will actually tolerate. And it turns out the market, us, tolerated quite a lot before really pushing back. Why this matters, waiting around for prices to go back to normal, is kind of like waiting for a sale that isn't coming. That old normal isn't the finish line anymore. It's just a memory. So the actionable move here is a mindset shift as much as a money one. Stop budgeting against the old prices in your head and start budgeting against the actual prices in front of you today. That sounds small, but it removes a surprising amount of the emotional sting. The frustration isn't really about the price, most of the time. It's about the gap between what you expected and what you got. The psychology of sticker shock. Which brings me to something I think matters more than any of the economics. Stuff, honestly. A big chunk of that gut punch feeling at checkout isn't really about the dollar amount. It's about the comparison happening automatically in your head. You're not just seeing 94 Tom's 36. You're seeing $94.36 next to a ghost number from a year or two ago. Some old mental price tag you didn't even know you were carrying around. And that gap between the ghost number and the real number, that's where all the frustration lives. I noticed this in myself pretty clearly. I'd get annoyed at like $8 for a thing of berries. Not because $8 was going to break me, but because some old version of me remembered paying $4. That memory was doing all the emotional work, honestly, more than my actual bank balance was. Once I noticed that pattern, I started asking myself a different question at checkout. Not, is this fair compared to what I used to pay, but, does this number work for my life, right now, today? It's a small reframe, but it genuinely takes some of the sting out, because you stop fighting a memory and start just making a decision. So what do you actually do with all this? Honestly, none of this is a magic fix. I'm not about to tell you 3 tricks that'll cut your grocery bill in half, because that's just not how any of this works. But understanding these pieces changes how you shop, quietly, in the background. You start checking unit prices instead of package prices. You start noticing which foods have short, simple supply chains versus long, complicated ones. You stop waiting for a normal that isn't coming back and start budgeting against today's numbers instead of yesterday's memory. And maybe, honestly, you give yourself a little grace at checkout because none of this sticker shock is a personal failing. It's not you being bad with money. It's a genuinely complicated system doing genuinely complicated things, mostly out of your control. So look, the receipt is still going to sting sometimes. I'm not going to pretend it won't. But the confusion part, the wait, WTF happen part, that part at least, you can put down now. You know the leaks. You know the chain. You know the ghost number your brain's been quietly comparing everything to. And honestly, just seeing the system clearly, instead of shrugging at one big scary word, is its own kind of relief. It won't make the total smaller tonight, but it might make you feel a little less crazy standing there in the parking lot, doing the math one more time.